Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about Fordism and post-Fordism. With that, I'll turn the subject, as always, to my grandson, Tristan. Go ahead, Tristan.
All right, thank you. So recently I've just finished reading all the way through Mark Fisher's Capitalist Realism, and I wanted to kind of do a little summary of the topics discussed in that book. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So, I want to start off by delving into one of the most, central ideas to the text, which is the idea of Fordism and post-Fordism. So, in Mark Fisher's view, capitalism has several stages to it. So, we usually, refer to capitalism in stages like late capitalism, early capitalism, stuff like that. But Mark Fisher divides the history of capitalism into two separate stages, the first being Fordism and the second being post-Fordism. And we're currently living in the post-Fordist era of capitalism. Now, basically what he means by Fordism can be most easily described by Foucault's concept of disciplinary societies, or in other words, societies that are capitalist in which the state has a lot of control over how, work is regulated and how capitalistic economic relationships are regulated and mediated. So, for example, the state affords private property rights, the state affords worker rights, the state affords, all of these different regulations for how businesses function, and corporations are mostly beholden to the states. Now, this is the form that capitalism took in the early years when it was first developed. So, in Germany, England and America, when capitalism was first starting out, this is how it functioned. It functioned according to Fordism. Now, post-Fordism is essentially the exact opposite of Fordism. So, whereas Fordism is very centralized, very disciplinary, post-Fordism can be best described as a society of control where capitalist economic relations are very, very decentralized and very, disconnected from the power of the states. And basically, post-Fordism is very unique because despite the fact that capitalistic economic relationships, are very decentralized and disconnected, this does not mean that more freedom is, allotted to the worker in the society. In fact, it would have the opposite effect. And basically the reason why this is because in a disciplinary Fordist capitalist society, the state was kind of the check for capitalism on a lot of things. Now, because capitalism is disconnected from the state, it has a lot less checks on it, it has a lot less balances. So capitalism has a lot more room to roam free and exploit freely. So this means that also because capitalism is not really beholden to the state anymore, that capitalism is more pervasive. You see, before in Fordist societies, capitalism was merely an economic system that was held in check by the state. Whereas in a post-Fordist society, capitalism has leaked into all aspects of society, not only the economy of a society, but the culture of a society and even the mindset of the people living in said society. And Mark Fisher, he basically develops on this view by saying that post-Fordism is one of the lead causes of mental illness in the population. So he says that mental illness is not necessarily a biological thing, it's more of a social emergent structure based on, your societal relationships and your economic relationships. So he kind of sums this up by saying, like, bipolar disorder, for example, capitalism is very bipolar in the way that it works, because capitalism has, Fordism and post-Fordism kind of in its structure, and it bounces between more Fordist or more post-Fordist capitalistic relationships, depending on, what's needed at the time. So, obviously bipolar disorder is, jumping from, very low depressive moods to very high manic moods. So these are basically opposite moods, and the mind bounces between these two occasionally. And basically Mark Fisher says that capitalism is the same way, in the sense that capitalism bounces from Fordism to post-Fordism when, it needs to be more pervasive and influence the population more. But then, obviously the process of deterritorialization, which we summarized in our, series on anti-Oedipus, would overtake the society if post-Fordism were to, I guess, prevail for too long. So capitalism has to bounce back to a more Fordist disciplinary structure. So capitalism bounces between these two very, very different, I guess, ways of working in order to sustain itself. And Mark Fisher, as kind of a final quick little note, he uses the analogy of neoliberalism and neoconservatism to kind of explain this bipolar disorder that capitalism necessarily has. So neoliberalism would kind of be analogous to post-Fordism, whereas neoconservatism would be kind of analogous to regular Fordism. And the reason behind this is because neoliberalism is very decentralized. It has a decreased focus on the state and a more increased focus on the freedom of business owners to basically do whatever they want. Whereas neoconservatism, it has a very strong state structure, so it can then influence foreign nations and through capitalistic values, and basically enforce capitalistic American traditional values in foreign nations. So you can kind of see here that neoconservatism kind of holds the Fordist notion of being beholden to the state, whereas neoliberalism kind of holds the post-Fordist notion of being very decentralized. So this can kind of lead to a very interesting phenomena where neoliberalism and neoconservatism, although being basically opposite to each other, they exist in the same society without kind of running into each other or clashing very much. It's because they are both necessary political systems for capitalism as a whole to survive. So that would basically end off the rants. So thank you for watching. That would basically be it. Yeah.
Thank you.